So our card for today, pick a random guy out of here. The fairy ring, which represents a portal, serendipity, risk. I love this card. This is going to go up in my room. Portals were a theme for me last year, and it seems to be coming up again. So let's see what that's all about. Okay, so we're talking about self-care techniques today for our clients who have jaw tension and jaw pain. And specifically, things that they can do at home after receiving an intraoral service, or, you know, sometimes we're not doing that for them because they don't want to receive, or maybe we want them to try some things so that they will be more open to receiving, or maybe you just want tips of things to do on yourself. So we're going to talk about some of those things. And if you want to go along with us, have gloves, a little bit of product. I'm going to show you some things as we go. So that's what we're doing, and some stretches too. So I want to talk first about like the main areas that people are going to need work. So whether they're receiving from us in a service or not, if they have any sort of jaw tension, jaw pain, and they want some ways to help this, there are other areas that they need to access, not just the masseter. So let me actually grab my little model so I can show you. So structure-wise, most people are going to think about the masseter as their primary concern, which can be the case sometimes. So we do want to access this muscle. This muscle actually has two portions, an outside portion that you can access here, and an inside portion that you can get with your finger inside the mouth. So we want to be able to access both portions, the superficial and the deep portion of this muscle. But there are surrounding things here, including fascia that's going to band around this whole side of the face. There's fascia around the ears that gets restricted. And so pulling on anything that is within the area around this muscle can be really helpful. And that's some of what we're going to do is work on the fascia structures. Then we have temporalis. Temporalis is going to be right here on the side of our head. And that attaches, if we remove this, you can see attaches right down onto the mandible. So this is really responsible for some of what we feel when the jaw is tight and being like clamped shut. Sometimes feeling like it's permanent, right? Some of us feel like we're all the time. But this is partially responsible for that. So some of the work really has to take place up here too, not just intraorally. And then inside, let's get rid of him. You have these little muscles way up there that are really hard to get to. So these are going to be the lateral pterygoids. They go from the sphenoid bone, which is right here. It's this butterfly bone that goes from each side and then into like the roof of your mouth, basically. They go from the sphenoid bone to the mandible or to the joint itself. And then we have these guys under here, of which I only have one left because the other one is lost, unfortunately. And this goes from the sphenoid bone down to the mandible. So these two muscles, or muscle groups, I should say, the lateral and then the medial pterygoids that would be sitting right here. Those are the ones that I think home care is really helpful for, because in a service, you need them to open their mouth and sit there with their mouth open for a good amount of time in order to get release. And it's just really hard to do without feeling like they're going to bite you accidentally, especially with the medial pterygoids, because you have to go between the teeth. And it's hard for them to keep their mouth open that long without having to swallow. And so it becomes a little bit easier for them to do that at home when they have full control over taking their finger out to swallow, or, sometimes you just let the saliva flow. I don't know any better way to say that. So it becomes a little bit easier, more comfortable for them to do on their own. And the more work that they receive, the better. So if they can be at home working on themselves regularly in between treatments, they're going to have better results. And they can help themselves with these like more acute things that show up, like having your jaw locked in place, having a really bad migraine, those like acute symptoms that pop up surrounding jaw tension. They can treat themselves at home if needed. So the other main places that I want to talk about at some point during this session are the suboccipitals, which are right behind your head. So these are actually going to be like this group of muscles that creates almost like a basket weave right here, connecting to like the occipital ridge and around the foramen here and onto the like base muscles of your cervical vertebrae. And the other thing I want to touch on is lymphatic work because most of the time people that have a ton of jaw tension have a ton of swelling and inflammation. And they can also do a lot of good for themselves at home working on that. So that's what we're going to talk about is, a little bit of fascial stuff, which includes stretching, getting in all of these spaces. We can even talk a little bit about the front of the throat here and releasing this area, which gets really tight with jaw tension. And then I'll show you some intraoral techniques. And we'll talk about some tools that people can use in order to release things like their suboccipitals. So that's the plan for today. Starting with the fascial stuff, because we can do that before we go into intraoral. That's how I would do it in a treatment, is release literally everything around the jaw before I get my hand in there. So there are a few main ways that people can do this on their own that are really effective. The first one is ear pulling. So what we would instruct them to do is just grab onto their earlobes, and they can do this all around the entire ear in every direction and stretch them until they feel the tug of like it wanting to stop. And you hold it and you let it sit for 3 to 5 minutes. Set a timer because it's easy to go faster. And try to let go around a minute or so because we get impatient. But with myofascial release, the longer the better. So set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes and pull the ear and hold it in the pull. What you begin to feel at some point is the tissue releasing, and then the stretch goes a little further. So every single direction on the ear is beneficial. You can even go inside the ear and grab here and pull. So every direction. If your clients have crunchy ears, so they're doing this and they hear crackling, keep stretching. Mine crackle. I don't know that I can make you be able to hear it through the speaker. But when I do this, there's crackling in the bones because all the fascia and everything is pretty restricted. I know that about myself and my own ears, that I have some pretty restricted fascia there. So that is a great way to start opening everything up. Sit and hold, sit and hold, sit and hold in every direction, especially if you're getting migraines or you feel like you have fluid in your ears. That's going to be really helpful. It'll do both, some myofascial release and some lymphatic drainage. For the scalp, so you can, get in with tools and try to release scalp restrictions. But the easiest way to do a myofascial release on your scalp is to pull the hair. So what I tell people to do is to just get their hands in there like this, grab onto what you can grab and pull it back. And, give yourself a facelift while you're at it with the pull. That's what it's going to feel or look like. But you really want all this tissue to be mobile. So once again, set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, grab and stretch. An easy way to do that uh if your like arms are getting tired pulling is to put your elbows on something. So, a counter, couch, table, whatever it is, put your elbows down, grab the hair, and then just lean down into it so that you're pulling as much as possible. So that will start to release all the fascia here around this space. So that takes care of the ears and the temporalis. And then the next place would be here on the face. And this is so easy to do. Place your hands on the face, like Home Alone, and you're going to stretch the tissue up as far as it will go. No sliding. Connect, stretch. And same thing, just like I said with the hair pulling, hold it at its furthest point And just feel it release and stretch and stretch and stretch. And if you need to, put your elbows down. And after about 3 to 5 minutes, opposite direction, stretch down. And just lean into it, let it all relax. This cannot be done with product on your hands or on your face. Your skin has to be dry. So this is a great thing to do in between, like washing your face and putting on your nighttime moisturizer, or if you do it in the morning before you do your morning moisturizer, because you want the skin to be dry. Otherwise, your hands will just slide on the tissue. Uh, but one of the things I like to instruct people to do while they're working on these three techniques is start to feel the tissue release. Become aware of your own tissue and your own tissue barrier of what it feels like when you get to the furthest point of the stretch. Um, and then what does it feel like when that releases and you can go a little bit further? It asks them to be more in tune with their own body, and that can be really effective at helping them build some like somatic awareness of tension and knowing what's going on in their own face and where their own tense areas are. So those are some of the main ones that I would focus on: ears, scalp, and then masseter, myofascial release. If you want to go in a little bit deeper with muscle work, then of course you can dig in onto the jaw muscles or onto the temporalis muscles. And fingertips are fine for that, or tools. I usually tell people take a gua sha and go as deep as you can get it before it feels really tender. Don't hurt yourself, but feel what that limit is. And when you get into that limit of, oh, that hurts so good, lean into it. A lot of times, people do have trigger points built up as well in their masters. And so once they become more comfortable with like working in this tissue and finding where the knots are, you can just put pressure on the knot and lean into it. Trigger point release, once again, 3 to 5 minutes. You can't just like press on it and it's gone, or rub around on it and it's gone. The fascia needs time to understand that it is safe and that it can relax. And so you won't get good results with any of this stuff unless you sit for 3 to 5 minutes. And that is something that I will tell people. This is a slow process. Take your time and lean into it if you find that you have these little knots here, if you find that your tissue is just really restricted. Um, that kind of opens up everything so that when we go in and do other work, it's more effective. And it can be things that are really easy to add in at night, right before you go to bed. So those are some myofascial based techniques. Going into the buccal work. So I always tell people to wear gloves. Doesn't really matter what kind of gloves you wear, as long as you're not allergic to them, right? We just need them to have clean hands or clean gloves. I prefer to wear gloves even on myself. A lot of times for self-care, people will say, oh, it's fine. It's your own mouth. You don't have to wear gloves. I would still wear gloves. It's just safer, right? So you could always gift them a couple of gloves to try out and see how it goes for them, or just tell them to buy any sort of glove that doesn't have a taste to it. Um, unless they don't care about that. I care about that, but that's just me. So I'm just going to start with one hand, and I'm mainly going to be using my thumb for this work. And then I'll show you the thumb techniques first, and then we'll go in and do a little bit with different fingers. They could also do like finger cots if they're just going to do finger work. They don't really need the whole glove, so that's another option. So the first thing I'm going to do is focus on the masseter itself and just softening all of that tissue. And this is something that like we would normally open with in a buccal massage when we're working on the bottom. Uh, what I mainly want to do is get my thumb in as far as it can go so that I can feel the inside border of the masseter. And we also want to get them comfortable with looking at like, okay, here's where my ear is. That's where the masseter starts. And if I follow that along a horizontal line, eventually I get to a point where the tissue changes. That's where the other border of the masseter is. Okay, now we're falling off the border. So we want to hit this whole muscle width and the whole muscle length from the zygomatic arch down to the corner of the mandible. So get them comfortable with like knowing where that muscle is, and then tell them to get their thumb in as far as it can go so that they can feel inside. So we would go inside there, and then the outside fingers are just going to circle. And truly, this is an intuitive practice when someone's doing it on their own. So we can try to be really specific all we want, but at the end of the day, as long as it feels good, they're doing something right. Okay. As long as they're not hurting themselves, they're doing something good. So get your hand in there as far as it'll go and move all of that stuff around. That would be the first step. And for that, I do recommend using a little bit of product. So I'm going to go in and just show you what I would do to myself, which is insert them all the way as far as you can go. Circle. You can also have them do some pulling. Pulling will help to stretch all of that fascia. The more product you have, the less effective the pulling is. So that may be something to start with and then go back and do some circles. But truly, anything you do in buccal work, you can show them how to do. But for home care purposes, really, they're probably focusing mainly on the masseter and then those other primary muscles I'm going to show you in a second. So you just go in, work it around, up and down, side to side. So something I really focus on in buccal training lately is making sure that you're hitting every fiber of the masseter. You really want to go in, imagine this muscle right here, right? You want to hit every single fiber length going up and down with your fingers, and then go all the way across all of these fibers to strip and make the fibers longer, and then cross fiber and get space in between the fibers so nutrients can flow in and heal and, rebuild all the muscle fibers that you're going to break up when you go back and forth like this. But you're doing the same thing inside to these muscle fibers with your thumb. Okay, so make sure you get all the way in there and the pressure comes from both sides, pinching on both sides, like so. It's a little aggressive, but it's fine on myself, not fine on other people. Usually I'm not that aggressive. But really work that whole span of the muscle. Anything that feels good. I go through the stripping and the cross fiber action with them to show them what that looks like and why they would want to do that. But it also really helps them to become more in tune with that muscle and know what that muscle feels like and where their problem spots are. Pay attention to anything that feels tender. If it feels tender, maybe pinch it and hold it for 3 to 5 minutes and let it release. Chances are it's a trigger point. Um, and that's like a whole other conversation that you could potentially have with someone about what their other symptoms are and where their trigger points might be and the places that they want to spend some time putting pressure. So that's the main thing for masseter work is really just breaking up that muscle, breaking up all the fibers, making sure it's really mobilized and stretchy on both sides. And then for pterygoid work, I like to use my pointer finger. So I'm going to change my gloves because I already have product on these so that I can show you what that look like. So the pterygoids, like I said, are up kind of in the back of your mouth, hidden behind your mandible. The only way to access them, and if you've taken my intraoral class, you may or may not have seen this because sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't have time to get to it. But essentially what you're going to do is have them open their mouth as wide as they can, and the finger goes up as far as you can get it. So you're literally trying to go on the outside of your teeth, back around and up between these two bones. I'm going to take his mandible apart really quick so you can see what that might look like. So we're trying to get them to get up into that space. So notice how the space opens when the mouth opens and the finger goes between the teeth and up there as far as it can go. If you've had this done or done it on yourself, you know when you get there because it hurts pretty bad. Okay, but if you want to make this into more of a fascia release, then truly anywhere you press in that area is going to be helpful. So don't overcomplicate it for your clients and don't overcomplicate it for yourself. If you hit the spot and it feels really tender and you know you're there, good. And if you hit a spot and you're like not really sure, still keep stretching because you're moving the fascia in the area and it will still be beneficial. Okay, so open, and then I won't be able to talk to you during this. So I'm going to open. I'm going to go up as far as I can go on the angle so you can see. I'll point outward a little bit here if I can so that you can see where that spot is. And then once you get there, we hold it for 3 to 5 minutes. So up. It's about right here. A good point of reference is that the joint, if you can find about where you think the joint's going to be right here, that is a connection point for the muscle and it goes horizontally. So if you get into this space, you're in a good place. When I hit that, it hurt really bad. So I know that I was there because it was really tender and I don't want to go too far, but I do want to hold into that spot for as long as I can. Like I said, 3 to 5 minutes is ideal to get a really good release. Sometimes what will happen is the muscle will start to shake a little bit, or you just start to feel like you can open your mouth a little bit more. This is a great technique for people who have side to side movement in their jaw. So when they open their mouth, it goes like this in some way, or their jaw locks in place or it clicks. If they have any of that clicking, grating, locking, anything like that, they probably need work done on those muscles. And so getting up there as far as they can go is helpful. You can switch up your fingers too. If you try to get up there and you're like, there's no space, I can't reach anything, you can use a pinky, which is going to be smaller, and try to get up into that space. Thumbs are not as effective. They're too big. There's just not enough space in between the mandible and the teeth to get all the way up in there, especially if someone hasn't had their wisdom teeth removed. So they still have their wisdom teeth, which I do. Sometimes it can be really hard to get into that spot without going in between the teeth. So sometimes I have to go in between and then go up from there. And in order to access it, depends how tight my jaw is because it does move side to side when it's tight. So sometimes I can't actually get up there as my teeth are in the way. Anyways, so I have to like really go around and dig in and find that place. Once again, good intuitive practice helps people understand what's going on inside their own bodies and helps them understand how their tissue is working and responding to things. The other pterygoids, the medial ones, are stacked inside the mandible in between the teeth. So you have to open your mouth, go between your teeth, and put pressure that direction, like you're trying to press into the bone almost. You could go that direction. You could also try to go back towards your throat with it, but it's not always easy to find the muscle fiber going that direction. So that one uh I don't think I have a lot of tension there, so it doesn't really feel like it a whole lot, but I like to be able to feel where the muscle is with the tip of my finger so that I know what's going on there. So it actually was kind of tender. So once again, another one that you want them to hang out for 3 to 5 minutes if they can, but likely you're going to have to swallow at some point. So you may have to release, swallow, go back in and press that direction with your finger. Releasing both of those every day would be my recommendation for someone who has pretty severe TMJD, jaw pain, headaches. They get migraines regularly. They're, grinding in their sleep, all of those things. I would recommend they do those two every day before they go to bed, just to get release in those muscles and mitigate some of those symptoms that they're experiencing. You could also go in and show them any other intraoral work that has to do with like sculpting benefits. So, uh, sorry, trying to get my gloves off. Like lifting, things like that. But for the most part, those people don't need to do intraoral work regularly. The people who need to do intraoral work regularly are people with, uh, severe jaw pain issues and alignment issues. Okay, so those were the intraoral things I wanted to show. So pressing in the pterygoids, number one, getting any trigger points in that area. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the suboccipitals. Let me get this product kind of rubbed in on my face here. Did myofascial, suboccipitals, and then we'll do lymphatic. Okay, for suboccipitals, it's really hard to work on your suboccipitals on your own. So the only way to really do that is to lay on something. I have two recommendations for that. One is from Chirp. They make like these wheels that you can lay on, and they originally made ones for the back, but now they make ones for the neck. So they have a neck wheel that has two different size, like little things that stick up in it. And you want people to lay on that for 3 to 5 minutes. Once again, releasing takes time. Getting uh those bulges on the wheel right here in this spot. The other one I can actually show you because I have one in here. It's called a cranio cradle. Cranio cradle is my absolute favorite. So these guys are like these little foam wedges, and they're very gentle. You lay on them just like this. So you see that they're showing you can use it in other places, but for what we're talking about, this or this are going to be the most effective. And that's because most of the time when people have jaw tension and they're clenching, they also have restriction in that space in the back of their neck. And so they really need that released as well. It's all connected. If you try to release one and not the other, you're not going to get full relief. So this can be really helpful for getting rid of that back of the neck pain that's like clenching everything together and also contributing to the clench. The front of the neck can be really a big part of that as well. A lot of times what ends up happening is like we have forward head posture, so our head comes forward, and then we're like trying so hard to hold everything back that the suboccipitals get tight, the jaw gets tight, these muscles right here get tight. So you can show people to grab these muscles and turn their head. A lot of times in a massage, you don't really get these worked on as much. Some people are really scared to do it because they're on the anterior throat, and there's a lot of blood vessels and arteries and things that go through there. But on yourself, you know when you've gone too far, you know if you start to feel dizzy or whatever, and you can always lay off. But pinching, rotating here, super helpful to release these muscles, the SCM. And then for the front of the throat, what I really like to do is just place the hands here on dry tissue, okay, right below the throat, and then stretch up against it. And you can also, while you're stretching with your mouth, and that will help stretch even more. It looks insane, and I can hear my jaw popping while I do it. But that's because I have a lot of tension in the front. So any sort of stretch through here is super helpful. Once again, 3 to 5 minutes. So I tell people to do this one while they're like meditating or something, or breathing, deep breathing, and hold for 3 to 5 and just try to feel that tissue lengthening and lengthening and lengthening through the front. That will help to release some of this here in the digastric as well. That's pulling in really tight. Um, The last thing was lymphatics. So, like I said, anytime someone has jaw tension, they likely have inflammation around the space here, and that can cause a lot of pain and irritation just from the excess fluid, and then puffiness and things like that. So, that's actually the first thing I start with people on is like, you need to do lymphatic pretty regularly to get some of the swelling down. Because anytime that you go in and you start working on things, all you do is create more fluid, and that does not inherently make the lymphatic fluid move. In theory, that's how it works, that anytime you increase circulation, lymphatic drainage increases. But in someone who already has some stagnation, that's not always going to be a reality. And so we want to make sure that everything is clean and healthy and healing and all of that before going in and doing a ton of aggressive stuff. So that's why I would always start with lymphatic on people and just giving them some tips to drain the fluid from this space before they go in and do any intensive intraoral work on themselves. I think it's important for them to know how to do that and be comfortable with it. So for lymphatic stuff on yourself, this is like the basic what I tell people to do. Find where your collarbone is and go right above it to the more squishy space. Um, make some circles if you want to find where that border is of your muscle. You're really looking for this muscle here, this SCM, that border and where it connects down to the clavicle. You want to go into the space behind it. From there, do like 5 to 7 little circles, pumping the space, and then pump your neck. And all you have to do is put your hands on your neck and pull down. Not overcomplicated, just pull the tissue. Very light pressure towards the clavicle. Hit that 3 to 5 times. Okay. Do 5 to 7 pumps here, 5 to 7 pumps there, 3 to 5 times. And then sandwich your ears. So get your ears in between your fingers, hands flat, the Home Alone face again, except for one finger is behind the ear, and pull down 5 to 7 times, then follow down the neck. That is all people really need to do to drain this space. So it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. They don't have to do a bunch of cupping and gua sha and things like that. It's really just connecting your hands and getting that fluid to move. Um, and that will help to drain any swelling that's stuck there. So once I know that a client is comfortable with doing something like that, then giving them that deeper work that we talked about to do is really helpful. And I just remind them, like, go back and do the lymphatic right afterwards, just to make sure that if you increase the swelling in that space, you get rid of it afterwards. That's going to make sure that you don't have any swelling or tenderness or breakouts or anything afterwards as a result of increasing circulation and not getting rid of the circulation through the lymphatic system. So we don't want to overload it. We don't want like more fluid to sit in the space. We really want that fluid to move, and that will be really helpful. So those are my main tips for people. There's other stuff that they can do, like stretch their neck. This is like pretty basic standard. Yeah, everybody needs to do that to release some of these spaces. But giving them, specific things like the ear, I think if I chose 3 things, it would be like the lymphatic, the ear pulling, and the pterygoid release would be like a good um kind of hits all the spots for people. And if you feel like they're getting more like migraines, then maybe they do the hair pulling instead of the ear pulling. Make it simple for people because they're not going to do it when it's too much. For someone like, someone like me, I have a lot of jaw tension and some like structural issues that are related to that. Um, And like if I could just do one thing every day, it's going to be the pterygoid release because I know that that makes a big difference for me after experiencing it. And the great thing about having your clients do this stuff at home is if they get really comfortable with their own bodies and understanding how they respond to and how their tissue works and what works for them, then they can make those decisions for themselves. And I think empowering them to do that is really helpful. So, what I would recommend for you guys is do it on yourself. Practice, see what makes sense for you, what you really enjoy, what makes a difference if you really truly do it every day, which I know we're bad at. I say that from the eye. I know I'm bad at. But doing that every day can be so helpful. Uh, so that's all I have for you. I just wanted to go over those few little things. I would say if you're not comfortable with the structure of the jaw and you really want to know more about that, then taking a class that is like anatomy based for intraoral is really helpful. And go back and like review that. If you're comfortable with AI, get in on ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to give you an overview of the joint and how it works so that you can truly explain that to people. Because once they understand and once you understand the anatomy and the physiology of that space, you can start to make good decisions about what they actually need released, and give them that very specific information. You can also wrap in other things to this, like energetic things, jaw tension is very related to the throat chakra. So if you are doing work with Reiki or chakra balancing or sound healing or energy work, essential oils, anything that you want to throw in there, crystals, you know, focus on the throat chakra and that will be really helpful for releasing that space energetically because, you know, there's something else going on there than just the physical usually. So that can be really beneficial to add in. Uh, the energetics. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was acupressure. So adding in some like acupressure points in different areas that help with releasing uh, can be really beneficial too. And we can like tell people those exact places to put their finger on and hold. So what I would uh what I would do if this is something that you really want to focus on is, you know, make videos for your client showing them exactly what they should be doing, book extra time to go through self-care with them and show them exactly how to work on themselves, have them do it in front of you so you can walk them through it, make sure they're doing it right. Make little handouts for them, maybe little like take home cards that say, do these three things, focus on these three specific techniques, whatever you can do, because in my experience, nothing gets fixed in one service. Obviously, I think you guys know that, but nothing gets fixed just in the treatment room. There has to be some like self-care stuff going on too. So this really gives them the tools to do that, I think.